everyone, I've got a really interesting project this week. I have a 2021 Tacoma TRD Pro in their legendary lunar rock color and a 2021 Tacoma Limited in the Nightshade version. And this one is in the midnight black, so two different color, two slightly different variation of the Tacoma, but they're both based on exact same truck. So it's kind of interesting to compare the two, and I want to point out the differences and how you should decide which is the right one for you. So this is, first of all, the 21 Tacoma TRD Pro. This is what everyone wants. It's at the flagship of the Tacoma lineup. It has the most capable suspension and tires. And of course, this is what we all talk about when it comes to Tacoma lineup. This one happens to be the one I own. So I do own a 21 Tacoma TRD Pro. And this one is a 21 Tacoma Limited in the Nightshade version. And this is the evaluation unit. So it will be really fascinating to point out the differences. So let me walk you through, first of all, with the Tacoma TRD Pro. Now this one comes in a number of different colors. The Lunar Rock is new for this year, but you can still get it in other colors such as black and white, and even magnetic gray. But the Limited in the Nightshade mode only comes in 3 colors. So this one is the midnight black. It's also available in magnetic gray, and this year for the first time Toyota is offering the windshield color, which is windshield metallic, which is a white color, and that replaces the Blizzard Pearl. And the two are very similar, but the windshield is slightly more subdued version, not as bright as the Blizzard Pearl. Not sure why they made that change, but anyway, that is exclusive to the Limited and the Nightshade mode. There are other differences between the Limited and the Nightshade version, but let me first give you the overview of what makes these two trucks either different or similar. So first, in terms of the exterior, what are the differences or the similarities between, again, the Nightshade and the TRD Pro? You can tell the TRD Pro is the only one that has this bold grille that everyone wants. In fact, this is so popular that people will buy the other non-TRD versions of the Tacoma and they replace the front grille to make it look more like a TRD Pro. So that's a difference. Obviously, it's got the big Toyota logo versus the Limited, or in this case, the Nightshade version has more of the egg crate design, kind of the subdued, glossy, semi-glossy black, and it's got the standard big Toyota logo on it. Now, the Nightshade also has blackout trims. So the TRD Pro also has the blackout trims, but the difference is that in the Nightshade version, the blackout trims are kind of semi-gloss versions. And so you've got the grille is semi-gloss. Then as you go around to the other part of the exterior, you get also another kind of matte black or almost dark gray wheels. I'll talk about the wheels and tires in a moment. And you have the emblem. In this case, this is a glossy black here. And so are the door handles, and the Limited emblem is also glossy. And of course, this is the midnight black version, so it's hard to see the blacked out emblems. But anyways, you get that here. And you also get sort of almost like an aftermarket type things where there is an actual emblem inside the indented rear tailgate, which you don't get in the Tacoma TRD Pro. So those are exterior differences. If you go into the Tacoma TRD Pro, then first of all, the color choices are different. Again, the Lunar Rock is only in the TRD Pro, and perhaps next year this color will be passed on to or passed down to other models, but for now it's exclusive to TRD Pro. And this one, of course, I've installed the sort of the step ladder here, and which is exact same one that's on the Nightshade. This is standard on the Limited Nightshade. But otherwise, we have the blackout trim here, which you don't get on the Limited or Nightshade. And then, of course, you get the big TRD Pro badge, which you don't get. So I don't even get the Tacoma here that you do get on the other Tacomas here. And then the mirrors are basically the same. And then we get the hood scoop here, which is not functional, along with some emblem or some decals on the hood to provide a very different look in the front. And then the headlights are both LED on both models, But of course on the TRD Pro you get the word Pro on this side and the word TRD on the other side. But here you don't get that. It's slightly different design. But if you look inside the headlight, the actual functioning part of the lights are identical to both. They're both LED lights. And so otherwise, again, I mentioned about the grille. The bumper is the same. You get this little air deflector on the Tacoma Nightshade, which we don't have on the TRD Pro because you want a better departure angles and so forth to clear the boulders and rocks you might climb over, because this TRD Pro is capable. And we also get the Rigid Industries fog lamp. You get more of a standard fog lamp on the Nightshade. As I walk through on the side of this TRD Pro, and of course there is a fair amount of difference when it comes to the tire and the wheels. The TRD Pro comes with the Wrangler from Goodyear and what they call the All-Terrain Adventure Series. This is the Kevlar version of the tires, and it is actually not a super aggressive off-road tires, but very, very comfortable and actually quite highway friendly. So obviously Toyota chose this tire because not only could it still be used in off-road condition, but in a normal city driving and highway driving is completely fine. It's quiet and it's actually very comfortable. So good choice, but not as aggressive as perhaps something you might want if you're truly doing an off-road. Also, the size is a 265/70/16, and the TRD Pro has an extra ground clearance, almost an inch higher than other Tacoma series. And of course, most famously, we have the Fox suspension system front and back that provides a heavy-duty off-road capability that is not in any other Tacoma. So that's the Tacoma TRD Pro wheels and tires. Again, they use 16-inch with sort of a semi-off-road tires to provide this truck with the capability to go anywhere while still compromising, because a lot of truck buyers and owners obviously use this for daily use. Now that we move over to the Nightshade, which is, by the way, as I mentioned before, it's based on the limited version. So depending on which country you live in, the feature list and the option list is different. In the US, the Nightshade is an added $1,000 option on top of the limited model. And you can get a variety of different models in the limited, both a 5-foot and a 6-foot bed. But in Canada, the Nightshade is only available in one level, one trim. So there is no more limited and the limited Nightshade, but it's actually just a limited Nightshade, just a one model. And it comes fully equipped without any other option, and it only comes in a 5-foot bed. So a fair amount of difference between the Canadian spec and the American spec, but here I have a Canadian spec for both, so it will be a little bit different for you depending on which country you live. But back to the tires and wheels for the Nightshade model. So because this is designed for people who use the truck as a daily car basically instead of a truck, and most likely they don't have to go off-roading so much. So the focus is on comfort, refinement, and smoothness. So the tires are Michelin LTX MS2, and this is primarily used for trucks that are meant for normal city driving and highway driving, and the sizing is 265/60/18-inch. The Limited and the Nightshade Limited is the only Tacoma series that has 18-inch wheels. The rest has either 16 like the Tacoma TRD Pro or 17-inch, but not 18-inch. So the wheels are obviously different in design, but the biggest difference again is the tire size, 265/60/18 versus 265/70/16. So this is much more roadworthy than this side here, and so you can tell right away when you drive the two trucks side by side, back to back. Obviously there's difference in suspension because we have Fox suspension here and a standard suspension here, but the tires actually provide fair amount of difference in feel. And the difference shows up in the form of the way that the trucks feel on the road. Because of the Michelin LTX tires on this side, the ride is very smooth, really comfortable, and very refined, and also not so bumpy. On the TRD Pro, even though it has a softer, much more compliant Fox suspension, because of the difference in compound between these two tires, The way that the steering feels and the feedback from the road is kind of different. Again, smooth, refined, quiet, a little bit more jiggly on the road, a little bit more bumpy, and you can actually feel the road in a different fashion from the Nightshade. And because of the difference in aspect ratio of the tires, that also provides a different feel. When you turn the truck around corners, it feels a little bit different. Again, a little bit more car-like, a bit more truck-like. Now, even though the Fox suspension is actually the shocks with the most amount of compliant and a good suspension travel, of course, when you're driving normally under city conditions, you don't notice so much difference. You do notice the difference when you hit the bump and some kind of obstacle pretty hard. You don't feel much of it in this TRD Pro. It just takes the shock really well. You feel a little bit more on the Nightshade. The difference between the two is, are you using the truck more for day-to-day use, or do you want to go off-roading, particularly into sort of a more of a tough courses where a Fox suspension will make a difference? So those are the difference between tires and wheels. By the way, the Nightshade and the Limited that's based on has a suspension setup that's identical to the SR5. Most people don't know that. They think the Limited has some kind of special suspension, but actually it has the same suspension as the base SR5. And the reason why is because that suspension is actually the most roadworthy or most highway-friendly version of the suspension setup. Nevertheless, of course, the TRD Pro is still good for day-to-day use, and the Nightshade still good for off-roading. It's not that it's a huge compromise between the two. The two are actually quite similar, and most people will be hard-pressed to find the difference between the two, even when you drive them back to back. Now, of course, this one is in the Lunar Rock, kind of a greenish gray color. I love this color, by the way. And this one is a midnight black, so the immediate feel is different. I think the Nightshade, because it's all blackout trims, looks pretty cool in black, and the TRD Pro looks pretty cool in this new Lunar Rock, but that's a personal preference in terms of color. As you walk through both cars and look at it, otherwise it's pretty well identical. Sure, some badging here and there are different, but for the most part, the two trucks look very similar. As I mentioned, in the US, you can get the Limited in both the 5-foot and the longer 6-foot bed. But in Canada, you can only get it in a 5-foot for Limited Nightshade model. And the TRD Pro in both countries only come in a shorter 5-foot bed. I have the tonneau cover in this Lunar Rock TRD Pro, and this evaluation unit has no tonneau cover. But otherwise, the inside is exactly the same. I have the LED bed lighting installed, and that comes standard in this Limited Nightshade model, so you can see that in here. But otherwise, they're exactly the same from the back. Now, the tail lamps are actually supposed to be slightly different, but when I look at it, they're exactly identical because it's slightly tinted on the TRD Pro, and so it is also in the Nightshade. So actually, the tail lamps are exactly identical. I do have a optional stepping foot pedal here, which is not on this one. This one also has the black chrome exhaust, which is also on the TRD Pro. Another difference is that the exhaust system is slightly different. Of course, this one has the black chrome tip on the exhaust, but on the TRD Pro, we do get a full TRD exhaust system, so it sounds different. So the exhaust system is different on the TRD Pro, and you can tell right away because it's a little bit louder, a bit more noisier, and you can tell even inside the truck the exhaust sound is different. I love the exhaust sound on TRD Pro, so I do like that. But once again, if you want a quieter environment and a quieter sound, then you would go with a Limited Nightshade. So they're very, very similar front and back, and then I'll show you the interior as well. And the interior is exactly the same between the Nightshade and the TRD Pro. Every single component is the same, and at least here in Canada, the feature set is also the same. They both get the JBL upgraded stereo system, and the difference is in the shift knob here. That is a little bit different between the two models. but it's exact same seating, same leather seats, and all of the features and options are identical between the two. And here I have the TRD Pro interior. Even the steering is the same. Again, the same JBL stereo system, same leather. The difference is that we do get the red stitching along the seat, which we don't get. And of course, we get the TRD Pro embroidered headset. That's also different. And the knob is also the shift knob is TRD Pro version. That's different from the Nightshade. I do have this optional little rubber mat I placed in cubby holes and cup holders that I purchased from Amazon. That's my own addition. Otherwise, it's exactly the same between the two models in terms of the interior. Finally, the most important difference between the Limited and the TRD Pro is the absence of the cruise control and other off-road capable system here. That's blank here in the Limited model, but in the TRD Pro, we have a full suite of off-road controls that we have, and that's obviously missing in the Nightshade version. In terms of the engine, the powertrain is exactly identical between these two trucks. We have the same 3.5 liter 6-cylinder engine and same horsepower, same rating throughout. And if you open the actual hood, the inside looks identical as well. You really can't tell difference other than if I peek inside and look closely enough, perhaps I can see some of the Fox suspension components, but really it's identical between the two. And if you weren't keeping in touch with Tacoma versus 4Runner stories, just keep in mind that Tacoma has a 3.5, the 4Runner has the 4-liter engine V6, so they are definitely a different engine. And the next version of the Tacoma is not yet coming out, not for about 2 to 2.5 years. And at that point, they will likely have a different lineup, both for gasoline and hybrid. So until then, we won't know for sure. But for now, the 2021 and for the upcoming 22, you'll be the exact same engine. Both are actually pretty decent. Lots of people complain about the Tacoma engine and particularly the transmission shifting, but been working on this for a number of years at Toyota, and the way that the engine works with the transmission has improved, so you don't get that kind of surge of engine RPM going up and down, or the transmission shifting issue that you hear about in the older Tacoma. That's pretty well all gone. For the most part, it's super smooth. The transmission shifting is good. And so again, because they're identical in the two trucks, you cannot tell the difference between the two in terms of the engine and the transmission. So even though the suspension is supposed to be a bit softer and more compliant in the TRD Pro to allow for a greater off-road capability, what I find out from driving them back to back is that it's a bit bumpier on the TRD Pro. I think it's primarily because of the tire difference. The tire compound is designed for off-roading, so it's quite a different feel from the Limited Nightshade version, which has a smoother tread and a little bit of a more refined feel. And as I mentioned, of course, the exhaust sound is different. It's quite a bit noisier and comes right through the cabin compared to the Nightshade, which is very quiet, even under heavy load. So those are some of the differences in driving feel. Which one do I prefer? Well, the TRD Pro makes you feel more like driving a truck, and the Nightshade makes you feel a little bit more like driving an SUV or like a 4Runner. And those are some of the differences between the two. Although at first glance, the two trucks appear to feel very, very similar. Indeed, they are actually still very similar, but there is a subtle differences. And I think a lot of it is not because of the suspension difference, but more to do with the tire difference. The Michelin LTX tires are very much a passenger car tires on this Nightshade, and then the TRD Pro gets a semi-off-road tires. So they do feel differently. It's less bumpy here. The tire noise is less, and it's noticeably smoother and just a lot more kind of like a passenger car feel. So if you want to use the truck mostly for day-to-day use to and from work or to shopping and back, and mostly is city driving with some mixture of highway driving, the Nightshade and the Limited model with the 18-inch Michelin tires are definitely a little bit more suitable for that type of driving. But some people might like the bumpier, a bit more truck-like feel of the TRD Pro. So that's kind of personal preference. But again, if you just want to drive it for as a normal passenger vehicle, I will say the Limited and the Nightshade definitely do have a smoother, more refined feel overall. So in conclusion, the two trucks are more similar than they are different. And if you really want to have the ultimate off-roading truck, you will go for TRD Pro. And if you really don't have much interest in off-roading and you want the ultimate road-worthy and the most refined version, you go with a Limited or Nightshade. Whether the Nightshade option is worth paying extra above and beyond the normal Limited, that's a personal choice. If you like the blackout trims, it's probably worth it for you. Otherwise, the two trucks are pretty similar, and I'll be hard pressed again for most of you to really feel the difference when you drive. A bit bumpier, a bit more off-road capable, and a bit smoother, a little bit more refined. And of course, there's difference in the feature and options. If you live in the US, there's quite a bit of difference. If you live in Canada, the option list is almost identical. The only thing that we don't get in the TRD Pro that we do get in the Nightshade, which I find it strange, is that there is a backup sensors is on the Nightshade, but we don't get it for some reason TRD Pro in Canada, but you do get it in the US. How's that for difference in spec and options? So the two are similar, so don't get too caught up about wanting to figure out which is the right truck for you. At the end of the day, they're all very capable, they're all great trucks, and pick the one that you like depending on how you want to spend the time with the truck, and you'll be happy regardless, because these two and all of the Tacoma lineup is in fact still the best-selling midsize trucks in North America, and for good reason, because they're reliable, they're actually fun to drive, they have both of the truck feel, but they're also pretty good on the highway in cities, and you can't beat the combination of what the Tacoma offers reliability-wise and resale value-wise. They both represent great value, and you'll never be disappointed, as I found out because this is my third Tacoma in the last 4 years. So more on Tacoma and things to come in my channel. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this was helpful, and we'll keep you posted on all the other news and interesting story about the auto industry.